Okay. All right, I think today particularly, I'll call this to order. It's 3:03. We're going to start with the roll call, and for this meeting, we'll definitely need to do it, please.
Yes, sir. I'm coming. Thank you, Reed. Okay, so we will call the meeting to order. Reed Williams. Here. Dr. Cantu. Here. John Agather.
Here.
Anaqua Garcia. Here. Councilwoman Villagran. And I thought she was going to be in person, so we'll skip her. And
I see her city council office there.
Okay.
Back of her chair. Back around.
Okay. Peter. Here. Andy Castillo.
Here.
Okay. Al Rodriguez. Here. Michael Kinnick. Here. Anne Marie. Here. Jack Hebden. Here. Wayne Eddington. He will be signed on later, and I think Tony Edwards. Here. Michael Sanchez. See Michael. Dee Dee. Here. Kurt.
Here.
See him. Christopher. Here. Dr. Femi. Here. Dana.
I saw him on there.
Okay. Jim Berg.
Here, Dana McGinnis is here, sorry.
Thank you, Dana. Jim, are you here?
I am.
Perfect, thank you. And Anita.
I'm here.
And I see Councilwoman Villagran now, so thank you. I got you marked in. So the only ones I'm missing are Wayne and Michael. And we're trying to get Wayne on the phone now. He's traveling. So, yes, sir, we have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, the next thing is the invocation with Jose Reyes.
Thank you. Please join me for invocation. Thank you for the many blessings that you've freely given to each of us. We ask for your presence to guide this meeting of the Rate Advisory Committee. Provide them with the knowledge, compassion, and wise counsel needed as they discuss the business matters on the agenda today. Help us all to remember that we are stewards acting on behalf of our customers, and provide us with the grace to serve all people well. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. Okay, the first thing we'll have is opening remarks by Dr. Romero.
Thank you, Reed. I didn't know I was going to be first. No, that's fine. Thank you.
We can change.
No, I'm good. Thank you, and thank you everybody on the rack who's in here in person and attending virtually. Mainly, I just wanted to thank all of you for the work you have put into this, and thank you for the experience and the education that you have given to me. This has been an amazing experience, and I've watched all the work that has gone into the planning for this. I know that you all learned a lot, but I've also seen, being on the outside and sitting there for every meeting, I've seen how y'all worked with each other and shaped some of the initial recommendations from staff were significantly shaped by the input that you all gave. And I've been really, really impressed with the sense of collegiality that's come from this committee. And I know the board is really looking forward to getting your recommendation. I'm looking forward to it. I know there's some disagreements about where we're going on this, but not to sound trite, but we're all on the same team and we're all working towards the same end, which is for the good of the community and to achieve the objectives that y'all set out. So again, just thank you so much. I don't know if the community understands how much time you all have put into this. I've been on a lot of public committees. It's not just the time you put in here. There's many, many hours that you all are putting in outside of this. So on behalf of the board, I really want to thank you for that, and looking forward to what happens today. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, we will vote sequentially. I would ask everyone to vote, okay? We were placed here either by a council person or the board in order to represent the city, the community, our customers. And if we don't vote, they lose their representation. So I do ask that everybody does vote. Fortunately, we have everybody here, and hopefully we'll get Wayne hooked up. He's, I think, going through the Panama Canal, actually. So unless he's in the middle of a lock, we should be able to catch him, I hope. The next thing I'd like to say is that after we have the first vote, we will go around and we're going to eliminate it down to 4. And then we'll have a discussion at that point and have another discussion. Now, clearly, when someone expresses an opinion about their position or a position that they don't agree with, there's going to be, I like this, I don't like that. It's all right to say that. Try to do it with facts and try to do it with humility and a little bit of reverence to the group, okay? I can break up a fight, so I will. Okay, so I mean, that's what I started out doing in the oil field. So let's don't get there, and we won't have that problem. Okay. So the first order of business is to call the vote, and since we are not a parliamentarily governed group, I don't guess we need a motion and a second. But if anybody ever challenges this, perhaps we ought to have a motion for a vote in a second. Oh, yeah. Golly, I tell you, I'm just so anxious to get this over with. I forgot about one of the most important things, and they're sitting right there. We need public input. I mean, that's what we're all about. So I apologize, and thank you, Ann. Now, let's back up. We've got some wonderful people here to speak today. And they originally had set it at 2 minutes, so please have it set at 3. I've conferred with them, and everybody says they can get through in 3 minutes, okay? So the first speaker is Ryan Weber.
Reed, after the speakers, can you review the voting procedure for everybody, please?
Yeah, I sure will. Thanks. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for taking the time to be here. First of all, obviously, the RAC process has been incredible. The transparency is brought to CPS's energy generation decision-making is excellent, and I want to especially commend you on the brilliance of bringing together community input in designing the weighted scores that help to inform CPS of how it should be considering this different portfolios. That really is pretty incredible. We can argue or disagree about how things should be weighted, but the process of getting community input to design those weighted inputs and feeding that in is pretty remarkable. I want to talk to you about some of the facts, and I'm glad to be able to talk to you about it before we vote. One thing that we'll notice, and I've brought some slides, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to present them or not, but one of the things that is interesting is when you look at the performance of these portfolios, using the weighted scores as was sent around to the RAC, one thing becomes really clear, and that's the outstanding performance of Portfolio 9. It does the best of any of the portfolios using the weighted scores that this RAC has identified as the top priorities. It does so by a wide margin, and in fact, it is the only score that scores in the top quartile of the metrics that we've determined to be the most important. There are 3 factors that are most important in that. The categories that you identified as the most important: the reliability, the emissions and environmental performance, and the affordability. In the reliability sector, Portfolio 9 is a full 1% better than CPS's optimized and required risk margin, which is a strong performance. And in fact, that's only in the year 2030. If you look at CRA's modeling of how it performs in 2031, 32, all the way out, you'll find that it performs above 15% in most of those years. And in fact, in several of years, it performs better than Portfolio 2, even in the reference case. While it has some vulnerability to some of the weatherization that's been marketed, you'll notice that in the specific scenario of volatile markets and extreme weather, which is the exact scenario we saw under Winter Storm Uri, it outperformed Portfolio 2 in that scenario, a realistic one we've just recently experienced. On affordability, Portfolio 9 is the least cost, the lowest cost in the reference case on the energy price. It's also the lowest cost of the top performers on PV revenue requirements. That's the investment choices. Interestingly, it also has the second lowest worst case scenario. It has the lowest price best case scenario across ranges in both of these categories. The reference price, the reference cost, or the reference case, is close to the high end of CRA's estimated range, which means that it only has a small amount of room to go up and more room to go down. And the total range is the smallest range of all the top portfolios, meaning it has the least unpredictability of price across these. It is the best and safest price option for San Antonio. And on emissions, you simply can't say that Portfolio 2 is CAP aligned because it happens to meet the 2030 target. CAP is a 2050 target, 2030 is one step along the way. Portfolio 9 not only meets those targets, it exceeds them, and it creates room and space in the inventory for other sectors that are harder to abate to get their emissions down in time while CPS has the ability. The CAP calls on all of us to do what we can, and the modeling here shows that CPS can reduce its emissions, can meet the CAP target, and in doing so will provide a better affordability option above the required standards for reliability set forth by CPS, which is why, based on the metrics you've identified and the case I've made, Portfolio 9 is your best option. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Alan, you're up.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you for the hard work that you guys have done over many, many months. I know it has not been easy. I'd like to bring a little bit different perspective to the decision-making process today.
Identify yourself, please.
Say again?
Identify yourself, please.
I'm sorry, Alan Montemayor. I'm chairman of the Alamo Group of the Sierra Club. I'm going to call this transition away from coal. When you make the decision to transition away from coal, CPS Energy away from coal, many different things will happen in many different time frames. First of all, crews in the Powder River Basin of Wyoming will not set explosives, detonate those explosives, run front-end loaders and crushers and conveyors. They will not load coal trains of 100-plus cars, and those are CPS Energy cars, by the way. The railroads will not traverse 1,352 miles, sending diesel fumes spewing into the atmosphere. It will not cause, those trains will not cause congestion and air pollution in San Antonio, contributing to our NOx burden, our non-attainment difficulties. CPS will begin the process of selling the over 1,200 SATX coal gondolas that they have. At CPS, at Spruce, a very large pile of coal will dwindle and be repurposed. That land will be repurposed into hopefully something that is more beneficial to society, maybe a park in that area. The coal supply ponds, the coal slurry ponds will be stabilized and stop leaching toxics into our groundwater. The approximately 200 employees of the Spruce coal plants will either retrain or retire, adding skilled workers to the CPS Energy workforce, workers that are desperately needed by CPS right now. And at last, the last lump of coal will smolder, ignite, and turn into CO2, ash, and air toxics. The fires will go out. The smokestacks will puff their last exhalation of CO2 and toxic substances into the air. And the people of San Antonio will heave a sigh of relief and breathe in a supply of fresh air. So this is only a small number of the things that are going to happen as a result of you moving CPS Energy away from coal. But I want you to take note of the fact that in reality, all of these things are good. You can argue that jobs will be lost in the Powder River Basin, but those people will transition to clean energy jobs. Many of them will be able to do that. Here in San Antonio, our own manufacturer of solar panels will get additional business because we'll be selling more solar panels. The wind energy will receive a boon out in West Texas and also on the Gulf Coast. And my ask of you today is to prioritize getting rid of coal as soon as possible for CPS Energy. And I know that many of you have that at your heart, so I really appreciate, again, the hard work that you've done to get us here. Option 9, to me, does look to be the best as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Al. Okay, Terry Burns, Dr. Burns?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dr. Terry Burns. I'm a former chair of the local Sierra Club. And I also very much support P9 for all the good reasons mentioned by the previous speakers and oppose continued coal use. I think this is something I've worked on for many years, and the ability of CPS to finally promise getting rid of coal has been an enormous step forward. I really want to thank them for it. And your work on generation planning has been a huge step forward as well with CPS involvement in the community. I want to thank all of you for that and thank CPS for allowing that to happen. I think that the work on rates will likewise be very beneficial. I think that the P9 is best and P2 is terrible. I really was shocked to read the other day that the CPS apparently thinks that may be the best choice. That is not the best choice for the reasons you've heard. It doesn't do anything about the climate, which some of you don't really recognize perhaps. But those climate goals were set by the Paris Agreement back in 2015. We are long past those goals now, and if anything, we need to do better, which P9 does. And as was said, it does better affordably, which again has been an important concern. In fact, P2 should include the $1 billion of lost money that we're all having to pay for decades because of Storm Uri. That was due to failed gas, failed coal, failed nuclear production during the Storm Uri. Those are supposed in these plans to be reliable energy sources. They were not, and I'm not convinced that they won't fail us again. Clearly, renewable technology is coming along. P2 says that we'll be able to renegotiate and do differently. But who's to say we will? Who's to say Rudy will still be here? Who's to say the city will not be overwhelmingly forced to go by Texas legislature with fossil fuels? I don't trust that. I don't trust CPS to, as they promised to get scrubbers on the Spruce 1, which they've never done. I say we need an agreement that shuts things down, and 2035 for this gas conversion is a target that we can live with. Clearly, it's not as good as some of the other renewables, but those may be more costly, as the models have shown. And therefore, given the tough choices that you have to make and the compromises that we all have to make, I urge you to support P9 as a reasonable compromise, good affordability, good reliability, good dispatchability, and very good climate changes. So please do that, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Burns. Okay, Dr. McGuire?
Hi, I'm Meredith McGuire. I'm the co-chairperson of the Conservation Committee of the Sierra Club here in San Antonio. I'm going to go over some of the things that somebody has already mentioned, but I want to focus primarily upon some other things. So to me, more important than that, basically what kind of coal are we going to be, or fuel we're going to be using, more important to me is to use this as an opportunity to create greater reliability in our grid. And I think that just about everything that we saw go wrong in the Uri winter storm is at at stake here too. So Austin's a good example of what we need to be doing here in San Antonio. They've done a much better job already of producing energy that's affordable and is distributed in the community more fairly than it goes on here. They have encouraged use of the grid for helping specific neighborhoods be sure to be able to keep their power going and so forth. And one of the main things that I'm focusing on is the importance of having a really effective grid. I guess we've got the image up here, although I don't know how well you can see it from there. This is a very simplified version of explaining the whole notion of having grid and microgrids. So the larger grid, which we refer to as a more regional grid, has to have something at its base to be firmly held straight. And San Antonio wasn't the only place where the grid really fell apart. Interestingly, Austin was in much better shape. And part of that, it has to do with the way that they charge for things, but also because the fact that there are institutions in Austin, and particularly I'm using, because I teach at a university, I'm looking at the University of Texas in Austin has an entire campus that is a microgrid. They can close off the rest of the power system and keep their own grid going due to the fact that they've got enough of their own production of energy and also storage. So they were able to go, that campus can go through many, many, many more days than the Uri storm lasted, and they are still in safe situation. What we need is that something like that for all of San Antonio. It's going to be harder because we have some places where people can't even afford what they've got right now, but we can do it and it will make everybody better off in the process. I noticed that the rate structure has to be tied in too, and so pay attention to all the things that Brattle was telling you about prosumers. What we need to do is to make the rate structure such that it promotes the usage of prosumers, and CPS seems to be very unhappy with the idea of having to share that money with prosumers, but the reality is if you've got prosumers who are both producing and consuming energy, we'll have a much more reliable grid. So yes, go with number 9. The Rocky Mountain Institute has a report that shows that if you don't go slowly, if you go too quickly into any kind of investment in a major product, that you have a great chance of that turning out to be a stranded asset even before it's finished being built. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McGuire. Okay, Alan, are you going to read?
I'm reading a entry by Cynthia Gonzalez, who is a Sierra Club intern up in Austin. She could not be here today due to a variety of things. I apologize for reading, but that's just the way it is. My name is Cynthia Gonzalez, and I've been an intern for the Sierra Club for the past 6 months, working on a petition to close the Spruce coal plant and avoid its conversion to a gas plant. I have to admit, at the start of my internship, I didn't know much about Spruce and the way it was impacting our community. But I did know one thing. I knew the climate change is the major and defining challenge of our time, from hurricane to droughts to snowstorms. Texas has experienced drastic instability and alarming changes in its climate and environment. Power plants like Spruce burn fossil fuels, which release carbon dioxide and methane. And as a result, greenhouse gas concentrations are at their highest levels in over 2 million years. As climate change makes the city hotter every year, Black, Latino, and poor neighborhoods suffer worst from rising temperatures. In fact, during UTSA's study on urban heat islands, San Antonio's east and west sides which are known for their large Hispanic and Black populations, can be anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees warmer compared to nearby rural areas. As a student and young Latina woman who is incredibly proud of her identity, it is very important to me that I use my voice and do what I can to defend those that continue to be pushed aside and disregarded. There is no doubt that the super-polluting Spruce coal plant needs to be permanently closed for the well-being and livelihood of San Antonio residents. However, after years of community outcry about Spruce, CPS is now proposing to run the plant on a different dirty fuel, methane gas, putting the lives of San Antonio residents at risk once again. Although it might seem like the gas is a better alternative to coal, new evidence suggests that natural gas use is growing growing so fast globally that the rise in carbon dioxide emissions from our gas has eclipsed the declining emissions from coal. Not only that, but methane leaks have more than 85 times the warming power of carbon dioxide, and as a result, at least 25% of today's global warming is driven by methane. A newly converted gas plant could run for decades more, emitting large amounts of climate-changing pollution and contributing to global warming for up to 50 years. If we want to ensure a future with a healthy and clean environment, we cannot afford a conversion to gas. Although I knew I cared deeply, petitioning for something you believe in can be scary, and I was afraid that people wouldn't care enough to sign. But when I went into work with freshly printed petitions, a student immediately came up to me, saw the petition, and found interest in it. She asked me more about it as I explained. She looked at me with intriguing eyes and nodded her head and showing an expression of concern. Without hesitation, she spread the petition. She signed the petition. My very first signature from a complete stranger. She was so excited to hear about the objective, and she was only on the first. Over the past couple of weeks, over 300 people have signed the petition. Over 300 people are urging the City Council to do something about Spruce, and over 300 people wish to stop the power plant from being converted to gas. San Antonio can have a bright future. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This will be real quick. San Antonio can have a bright future with clean air and healthy environment, but in order to do so, we must make changes as soon as possible. The city needs to invest in the people most harmed by climate change and make the necessary changes to ensure healthy living conditions for future generations by investing in clean energy storage, energy efficiency. CPS can do good for the well-being of the city's residents. City Council needs to tell CPS Energy to do the right thing and choose clean energy over gas. And I've been asked also to add that the Sierra Club is very much behind option 6. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Alan. Good job reading. Okay, we're, I'm not sure, we need to show the people again as soon as we can. That way I'm not so big on there. Yeah. Anyway, I'd rather not be on there at all. Okay, wants to go over the voting. What we're going to do is, I've got the list here. It actually is in alphabetical order. So I'll call the name. You give me the portfolio that you want. I'll then go to the next person. Now, when we finish this, it shouldn't be hard. I can read off the results very quickly, and then we'll have a discussion. We'll keep the top 4, and we'll have a discussion. Whoever wants to talk, however they want to talk, and we're going to get our people back up here.
Yes, sir, we're working on it.
Yeah. We're going to have a pause here. There we go.
There we go.
Now I'm more comfortable with this. Okay. All right. And we got them all. So then we'll go and vote again. We'll drop the 4th one out. We'll do it again. Just sequential voting. It's very simple. It's kind of like a runoff. Okay. Starting out with the first vote, the first person is John Agather.
I vote for option 2.
Kurt Anastasio.
Option 2.
Dee Dee Balmaris. Jim Berg.
Option 2.
Andy Castillo.
P9.
9. Dr. Cantu? Did we ever get Wayne on? Did we ever get Wayne on? We never made contact with him?
I thought Kathy is coming. She's got Wayne on the phone right there.
All right, I think we got, oh, she just gave me the sign. What? What did he vote? No? What? Okay, well, we'll give him a little time. It's, okay. Mr. Edwards, Tony Edwards. Christopher Fullerton? 6. Anaqua Garcia? 6. Jack Hedberg? Michael Kinnick? Nita Ledbetter? I see her. I don't hear her. Hi. You're muted.
Sorry about that. And just very quickly, we're going to come back and vote again after we have the top. Is that
Yeah,
what
if we
you're
don't
saying?
have 13 votes for something. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. I'm going to go with P9.
Dana McGinnis. Dana.
P2.
Anne Marie. Peter Onfrey. Femi. Al. Let's see. Michael ever get on? Going once. Councilwoman Villagrán.
9. 9.
And I vote 2. Okay, we've got 4 for P9. We've got 4 for P6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 for P2. Okay. That's yours?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, now we'll go, and since there's only 3, we will skip a vote, and we're going to the 3 page. We just picked up some time, folks. We need to be happy about every little move. All right, here we go. Now, I will take this in the same order that the vote is. If someone has a comment, I'll call their name. They can say that they have a comment or pass. John Agather.
Pass.
Kurt Anastasio.
No change to my vote. I'll pass.
No, I'm not. Do you have any comments about why or why not? We've got 3 portfolios left. We've got 2, 6, and 9.
I like 2 for some of the reasons I've said previously, in that, with a premium on reliability and dispatchable power while moving us forward environmentally, buys us time during which we're going to see, more trillions of dollars, probably in the trillions, spent by Wall Street and private equity and also the oil and gas industry and others on renewable solutions, many of which will, that are not fully apparent today as good solutions, will become more apparent to us in time. But we've got a shorter term problem that P2 handles the best on ballot. So that's why I'm with P2.
Okay. So let's do this. The reality is we need to go all the way to just, okay, we're going to eliminate, this doesn't make sense. We got to eliminate one of them, so I'm down to 2 now, okay? Am I right? I mean, think about this. If everybody just votes for the same thing they did after we've done this, we're at the same place, right? That wasn't really smart of me, all right? So let's think about this. So we've got to we got to get down to where you can only vote on 2 this time, all right? You can vote on, if you vote the same thing you did, then we're just gonna, it's like, whatever that, Groundhog Day. We don't need that, all right? So we really actually are gonna have to, anyway, let's go through it. All right, we got 2 for 2, comments made. Dee Dee? Dee Dee? Oh, okay. Well, I'm thinking too. Now, how do we get out of this box? Because think about this, folks. We got a lot of smart people in this room. Anna, with all the...
Well, I have a suggestion, Reed, but someone may have a better
please, go ahead, Kurt, and then we'll go to council.
I was just going to say, since you have a tie for second, if you will, between P6 and P9, maybe those who are in favor of 6 or 9 need to prioritize those. So then you'll have a top 2 to vote on. So so in other words,
does anybody have any trouble with that?
if you had to choose between 6 or 9, which one? Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you had to choose between 6 or 9, and we may end up in the same place. I don't know. There might be a
we might. Okay.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Sandoval, do you have a question or statement?
Well, if you only had those people that voted for 6 or 9, well, no, that wouldn't have worked either.
We thought we had this, but really what we've got to do is we've got to drop, we had a tie, so it doesn't work. Okay. Oh, yeah, I've tried to explain this. It's a good suggestion. I started out with this and people gave me a real blank stare. It's called rank choice voting. We could do that. And if y'all want to hang on, we can talk about it. It would solve this, okay? It definitely would solve the problem. But I think to focus on the debate, I think the talking about 6 and 9 really focuses on the 2 that are tied, okay? And I think instead of trying to explain ranked choice voting, we could have done that on the first one. It's simple in that you give your top 3 choices, and then if your first one, it doesn't make it, you go to your second one, then you go to your third. But I think I don't think anybody's going to change their mind, okay, that just voted, right? They don't have to, all right? There's no one that has to unless we drop one out. So, yeah, Femi, you got an idea?
Well, I'm just
hate to work this in real time, but we might as well.
I'm trying to support the ranked choice voting because I thought that was what we were going to do initially.
Okay.
We don't have to go through this. It's almost like those who support one portfolio over the other will essentially be campaigning for it.
Okay.
And I don't think we should do that here. We should simply rank our choices.
Okay.
All
right.
Through the automatic runoff, as it were.
All right. Okay. Let's.
Well, who didn't vote? There are 2 votes.
Well,
missing.
they're not here. They can't vote. I mean, the point is they're not here. They can't vote. We got Michael Sanchez is not here, and we can't get a hold of Wayne Eddington. So I can't. There's no magic I can do. Okay, so let's. Yeah, sure, Tony.
Is there any value to, for example, going through each person and asking them why they voted?
That's what we were doing.
Well, here's my point.
Yeah.
That if we don't do that, then we'll never have a record. Of
Good point.
individual
Yeah.
Because we all represent a constituency
Yeah.
of some sort.
Okay.
So I'd like to make
All right.
that recommendation.
All right. I like that because I think people need to hear it, and I need to hear what y'all are saying because, we gotta relate this properly to the board. And I'm sorry for this confusion, but I hadn't thought of having a tie. I should have, but anyway, I didn't. Now, so let's just keep going, and let's talk about which ones you're voting for. At the end, If we want to do ranked choice voting, you can give me your ranks, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, okay? That'll solve it. All right, but I'm not going to do that unless people agree to that. I mean, this is pretty open democratic thing right here, okay? This is full democracy, right? I don't see any objections, so we're going to let people go through, talk about what they're doing, and then we'll ask people to give them their 1, 2, 3, okay? All right, we're down now. Back to you, Dee Dee. I got you confused, or are we all confused? Let's just.
Well, I think that the ranked voting would drop out.
Dana, wait, Dana.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, go ahead, Dee Dee. Yeah, use the microphone. We got plenty of them. Pass them around.
This is very confusing.
Well, we don't want it to be confusing.
And I
so.
think what happened is, like, from last meeting, we were pigeonholed to option 2 and 9. And I think that was very intentional from CPS Energy versus us just going through whichever portfolio we preferred and had discussion on that. So.
Okay, I don't want to drag in here, but I don't think they pigeonholed us on anything. They gave us their opinion, but we have our opinion, so I need yours, and that's what's important.
So how are we going to do this? Because I am 100%, and I've explained my position on gas before, handful. I mean, multiple times. So
right.
Yeah, I'm sticking with 6.
All right, and it's just because you're against gas. Is that? I'm just trying to get down your thoughts.
Yes, I've talked about gas, the volatility of prices, the environmental impacts, the health impacts. Yeah, I think I've explained all of that. You know, the outlook of wind and solar from this summer, I gave, you know, exact figures from ERCOT on how wind and solar performed. So I guess I will say, like, also after listening to the presentation or the update to City Council yesterday on STEP and Councilwoman Sandoval's Resiliency, Energy Efficiency, and Sustainability Fund, you know, I'm encouraged that the city is focused on securing the funding from IRA, IGA dollars for, you know, the clean energy transition, the loan programs for utilities to invest in solar, wind, hydro, biomass, geothermal plus storage, the production tax credits, investment tax credits, the energy infrastructure reinvestment loans from the Department of Energy, $4.75 billion in greenhouse gas reduction grants from the EPA. I don't feel like the potential from the IRA was communicated enough from CRA. So I will always keep my position on frac gas, that it is not the solution. In terms of bills, it's not the solution for our environment. It's not the solution that we need from health impacts either. So those are my comments.
Okay.
I have a question then for Dee Dee.
He has a question, Dee Dee. Go ahead, ask your question. Nicely.
Nice.
Would you mind explaining?
This is not a Q&A session, really, Dana. Ask the question. When you get to your time, we'll talk about that, okay? This is not a Q&A, okay? All right, Jim Berg. Jim?
You want to know which portfolio?
No, what we're trying to do here is see if we can convince someone to change in some direction. And if not, we're going to have to go to ranked choice voting, or we're going to have to decide that we don't make a recommendation, okay? That's where we are.
My vote remains at 3. I will say that what Kurt had to say was right on the money. And the other thing I would add is that with the precarious financial situation which CPS is in, we are hardly in a position to be making long-term, expensive decisions on generation, and that we need to get our house in order first, and then work on generation. I think that generation is important, but there's no impulse, there's no immediacy to it. We're not dying of noxious gases in the air as some would purport. And east side, west side heat zones are preposterous. So I'm concerned about CPS. This RAC committee is citizens, and our gem in the rough is CPS giving 14% of its revenues to the city. You jeopardize that, and all of this discussion is moot. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Jim. Andy Castillo? Andy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm with P9 just because, my neighborhood is an older neighborhood. We depend on gas for heating and cooking in this area. But at the same time, I know we need to move forward. And the idea of putting all of our chips on gas only is what I'm afraid of. I figured a P9 was a nice compromise between renewables and gas. That way, my community doesn't get too hard hit with gas prices in the future.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Dr. Cantu?
Thank you, Reed. I went with P6. It's the renewables. I'm looking at environmental sustainability, and from the environmental sustainability point, certainly it does perform, and in some cases outperform the cap, but more so, many of the other ones that are gas heavy, or I'm sorry, gas heavy, as well as continuing the coal plant. And although there are impacts to health, cost, which is translated to the carbon tax, we're still looking at a very tertiary way of looking at this, because we're saying that health impacts will be there. We're going to pay for them as people get sick, when it's more efficient to prevent getting sick or have health impacts in the first place. So the environmental sustainability viewpoint is very strong with P6, and that's why I'm supporting that. It's risky, yes, but issues around climate change are also risky. And just to also say to Mr. Berg, people do die. People have died from many of the things that are attributed to emissions. Thank you.
Okay. Next is, well, Wayne's not on yet, or ever. Okay, Tony, go ahead. Microphone, turn on.
All right, I'm
Now
sorry.
there.
All right. Several weeks ago, I was going to support Portfolio 9, and after some consideration, I decided that I would support Portfolio number 2, in large part because CPS Energy has made the recommendation that is where their support lies. And probably several of you know that I'm a 28-year retiree from CPS Energy, so I've gone through lots of history here organizationally with regard to, for example, Southeast Advisory Council, where we actually had groups of people that looked at issues with the coal plant, and we did some things to make things better. And so I have confidence that CPS as an organization, the information that we've obtained from Charles River and Associates help us make a more informed decision. And because of that, I support Portfolio number 2.
Thank you. Okay, Christopher Fulton's next.
Hello, everyone. I want to mention briefly my gratitude for being part of this discussion, and especially as the newest member of the board, of the committee, your welcome and your encouragement. And I know we all have had some lively discussions, and we represent different viewpoints, but it's nice to see that we can continue to have this conversation today and try to find a way to make common cause on behalf of San Antonio. I also want to emphasize that, to me, CPS is an important community asset because it is part of the city, it is part of our community, and the recommendations that we make for this entity and for generation moving forward are not merely the summation of the data that we've been carefully reviewing the last several months. It's also a statement of values where we see our city today and where we see our city going. And this includes things that are difficult to quantify, especially economically. Some of the health concerns that Dr. Cantu raised. And it's very easy when we don't have good, solid numbers, particularly dollar signs, to dismiss or underrate some of the challenges there and some of the risks. We've talked a lot about risk, and I think we sometimes lean too heavily on certain kinds of risk and ignore or don't weigh enough the other kinds of risk, particularly quality of life, health, and those kinds of things. So I wanted to underscore that and the environmental sustainability component of all of this. The city voted on a mandate. The council issued a mandate to follow the cap. And I take that very seriously, and part of our job, I think, is to try to help divine a way forward, meeting milestones on that journey. Now, we're looking a long term off, of course, for the cap, and in theory, we're looking at a 10-year frame here. But I would suggest we look at this both in terms of a telescope and a mirror in the sense that where we're looking backwards. When the RAC was formed, about 10 years prior to that, was when the last Bruce was built. And clearly, there have been enormous shifts in economic markets and policies and the rest over that 10 years that could not have been anticipated. And as we look forward 10 years, we can anticipate a tremendous amount of risk there. We can anticipate risk in the next 3 or 4 months as the legislature goes into session. So 10 years, much less 30 years on, are a challenge, and I want us to take a deep breath before we commit ourselves to investments in gas that are going to be potentially 30-year investments. We could find ourselves in the same situation in 10 years that we are with coal when the economics are changing and we have to figure out what we do with this sunk cost that we've invested in the gas. So for those reasons, I'm supporting 6.
Thank you, Christopher. Okay. So we do have Michael Sanchez is on now. So, Michael, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Hey,
well,
thanks.
we can, I guess, back up and take your vote because you're going to vote at some point in time now. So, what is your vote?
Yeah. Well, like I said last time, I'm going with number 2 for all the reasons stated previously. We're going with portfolio number 2.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. We'll catch your comments here in just a minute. Thank you, Christopher. Appreciate your comments there. Anaqua Garcia, please.
Hi, I'm going to stick with P6, and I just want to go back to what Dr. Cantu was saying. And I think nobody knows more than Dr. Cantu here on the environmental health effects on our communities of continuing to pollute the environment. And so when we say that nobody is dying, what people mean is that nobody I know is dying. That often comes with privilege. And so I think in San Antonio, it is estimated that around 5 people die annually from the environmental pollutants that are emitted in our city, not all of them being CPS cumulatively. And so I think these 5 people annually, their lives matter. And it is important to recognize that. And for that reason, I'm sticking with P6. And I think I'm going to brag a little bit. And I think no one on here can say they spoke to 1,800 people this year, which is what Southwest Workers Union did. We collected 400 climate emergency petitions, and we delivered them to City Council back in August. And then during the 12 days of early voting on Election Day, while people were going to vote, 1,200 San Antonians stopped at our table on the way to and from the polls to sign our petition, calling on the city and CPS to shut down the Spruce coal plant and transition it to renewable resources. And so I just want to bring those folks in who have so much going on in their lives. A lot of them don't even know that power generation planning is happening. A lot of them don't even know where our power comes from. And so there's this cavern of uneducated community members, not because they want to be, but because there's just so many factors that keep them away from being here. And so representing those community members, I stick with P6, and that's my vote. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Jack Edward?
I'm going with P2, and I've stated before and why, and a lot of the reasons others have said, so I don't want to just keep dwelling on the same points.
Thank you, Jack. Michael Kinney?
Yes. Where do I want to start? So P2, the reasons that I'm voting for it. Actually, first of all, while I understand the environmental concerns, and that is one of my concerns and factors in, we also, as a group, said that system reliability is one of our goals, affordability is one of our goals, system flexibility is one of our goals. So there's a lot of things that we should be looking at here. But P2, some of the things, the reason that I like it, from an environmental point of view, it does eliminate coal. It meets the 2030 cap targets, while it doesn't meet the 2040. As we discussed last week, there's a lot of technologies that are under development. We really can't look as far as 2040. It's too long range. This decision is for the next 8 to 10, maybe 12 years, and this does meet the 2030 cap targets. I believe that P2 offers us the greatest system reliability and climate resiliency. It offers us the greatest independence from ERCOT, so we're not dependent on ERCOT. It's affordable. It gives us dispatchable gas so that we can be in control of a lot, of our energy supply. But it also adds some renewables. The list here is adding some wind and solar. So I think P2 is a good balance of the things that we're looking at. I think one of the things that I didn't like about P9, just to chime in a little bit on that, is I didn't like the idea that this selection suggests that we convert Spruce 2 and then just close it down 7 years later. That seems like a poor investment. I'm not sure why anyone would want to spend all that money to convert a plant to gas just to shut it down a few years later. You'd think you'd want to get more of the life out of that plant unless other cheaper alternatives came that made it affordable to not utilize that plant. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, Anita Ledbetter? Anita?
Thank you very much. I feel like today is the, we've been preparing for this now for a very long time. And I'm also very honored to be here and to be a part of this process. I've learned a lot, and I've really, kind of weighed everything out. So I have a few things I wanted to share. I think that we're, as we all know, kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I mean, just in practical terms, the world and the markets are changing around us. I think it is very difficult. And I understand, that we are looking at, potentially like a 10-year plan, but to some of the points earlier with like 30-year assets. And, you know, I will say that one of the things that, about P2, for example, that concerns me is this. I think it's very dangerous. I mean, even just I mean, not even talking about our emissions and the environment, because I think we've all shared that. I think the problem here is really going to be that you know, we're going to have throw everything into gas. I mean, I really appreciate Andy Castillo's comments earlier on this point. I think it when you start looking at that and we put everything into gas, it's like, you know, I think it's a very dangerous situation. I think the world is going to change a lot over the next decade or over the next several years. And so, you know, I think the other thing too is also we're not looking and weren't able to really assess how that compares against, like, for extreme weather, you know, because I understand we didn't kind of look, they didn't go back and look at what happened, and, you know, not, like with our current portfolio the way it is, there's a lot of variables changing there. Another concern that I have is the development of the Texas Energy Plan and what's going to happen over the next several months here will be a major impact to our long-term strategy. And so I'll kind of say this too, that I feel like I voted today because I was asked to vote. If somebody waved, you know, and said, hey, you know, you can do whatever you want, what would you do? I would say that we really should have waited a few more months until, or a little bit further along in time till we have more information. And because of what is going to happen at the state is going to affect us so greatly. Another thing is I feel like I mean, you know, in reality for me, it's like I would urge CPS Energy and the Board of Trustees to say whatever passes, the hard reality is we're going to have to come back to the drawing board in the next several years quickly as technology and the world and the rules change around us. You know, I know we all heard about the advancement in fusion. It's very exciting news. There's a lot of debate how soon is that going to be commercially available and when. It could be 30 years, it could be 20 years, it could also be 10 years. And so, you know, we need to be thinking about the impact and the viability of future technology. And I know that I know CPS Energy is open to these ideas, but I think that as a board of trustees, you know, to call that out, we seek the advanced technology that's coming. We want to prepare for that, because what we keep on grid is we can control more, right? So one of the things that I also, you know, about P9 that that makes me very uncomfortable, because I know this has been a big part of my comments for a long time, is that it's so risky to put all of our bags in, like, hey, if something happens, we don't have enough power, you know, then we're vulnerable to those market prices. And that also is, I think, a very dangerous position for San Antonio to be in. So, you know, on one side we have, you know, a short-term problem. You know, obviously we have to make some short-term corrections. We have to, you know, stabilize, but we also have to think about what's coming in the future. And there's so many things that are changing right now. So for me, I'm against P2 mostly because we're gonna, you know, we're putting all of our eggs in that one basket, and we won't be the only ones to do that, which means somebody somewhere is going to try to control us again, and that's not good. We leave everything up to, we're going to buy our power that we need out on the grid. That also puts us in that same position. So again, I voted today because I was asked to vote. In a perfect world, I think that it's premature to even have this plan right now, because we haven't really fleshed out all the externalities that will affect us, and also the extreme weather. So again, you know, I'm going to say that this transition to new technology and to find, you know, and to early invest in the technology that's going to carry our peak load is critical to the survival of this community in the future. And it's not putting all of our eggs in one basket, you know. And yeah, I mean, I feel like that's, you know, we have to adapt beyond just gas for many reasons. And so, you know, there was a comment earlier, you know, why like in P9, why convert the plant to gas and only have it open for 7 years? And that's just because of the economics of it. About if you do something too fast, the people who are going to pay for it, obviously, are the people of San Antonio. We have to do this, but that gives us a little bit of transition. And so, and you know, and I appreciate a lot of the comments around that as well. But again, you know, at the end of the day, it's like I know only one thing, and that is actually all of the options, while you know they're making some advancements, are still in the old way of thinking. And that's not going to take us very far in the future, and we will have to come back very quickly to the drawing board as these things solidify. So I would, you know, kind of my final comment here is just to say, please don't leave us at someone else's mercy out here, the people of San Antonio, one way or another. And again, I would have advised the Board of Trustees that this was too early to commit to one of these plans because of everything changing around us. And you know, that's kind of where I am right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Okay, Dana?
Well, my first comment would be actually saying that all of our eggs are not in one basket. And number two, if you just look down what our consultant, Charles River, pointed out in number two, that there's wind and solar additions, short and long-term duration storage, geothermal, foot in the water for hydrogen. So it's really not all gas. It is a lot gas, and I think it's that way because we need to be as risk averse going for the intermediate term as we can. Because as Jim Berg pointed out, the condition of CPS Energy now, and the fact that lots of CPS customers are stressed in paying their current bills. So P2 is a little bit of a compromise. I think more gas would be actually better. And long term, a lot of the lobbyists that we heard from the Sierra Club and everything against the gas, they don't really point out the risks and giving it up for some aspirational type of future source of power. Now, we need to be aware of that kind of stuff. And there are examples of this, as I've said many times, around, even in Texas. Look what's happened to our own grid. You know, the prices are higher. We're short of gas. The price of gas is high. The price of coal is high. And why is that? It's because for 20 years, we've subsidized wind and solar, and dispatchable power hasn't been built yet. Now, rightly or wrongly, this is a problem with the current grid. They're trying to fix it, as many of us have pointed out. From the recent meetings, it doesn't look like they're even close to coming with some rational solution to the Texas grid. And we have to be sure that San Antonio is doing the best we can to maintain the power in our own city without having to rely on something that's unreliable, which would be buying power from the grid. We tried that in the winter storm. I mean, somebody made the decision to buy $1 billion worth of gas. Why did we do that? So look at the other examples in Europe. They were ahead of us in wind and solar and closing down the nuclear plants and everything else. And then for months, the wind didn't blow. They were paying $100 an MCF. That's $600 for oil, basically. And the price in Europe is still $30. They can't afford $30. And they got in that position partially by going too fast into the future, relying on wind and solar and Russia. So we need to try to do something that's the safest going forward for CPF. And number one, which I said I was going to vote for last week. And number two seems to be a bit of a nod towards trying to meet some environmental goals. And I think it's the best solution for San Antonio and CPS. That's it.
Thank you, Reed. So I actually had a first and second choice. And yeah. Or I can offer it now, I guess. And in Andy's comment about his sensitivity to customers with gas, I share that sensitivity. It's not just in your part of town, Andy, but in a lot of the homes that are in the 50, 60-year-old range do have gas. And that was answered, that concern that I had was answered in the last meeting. So as I'm listening to everybody, and I had my first and second choice, my second choice was number 2, was portfolio 2. And as I, again, listened to everyone's comments and weigh them and weigh what I've already had in my little, all my little columns, my little check the list columns, I am comfortable with changing my vote to portfolio 2.
Thank you, Reed. First, I'd like to thank the CPS staff, Charles River Associates, Burns & McDonnell, for all the diligent work throughout this generation process. I thank you for the detailed answers to our questions, and especially the questions that I asked about STEP. Rudy, I watched the B session yesterday, and I was very pleased with the commitment to serious collaboration with the city, with STEP, and I look forward to working in those collaborations to prioritize the LMI customers, as well as what's our generation planning reflected, which is increasing that capacity savings while being able to achieve the goals of prioritizing the low-income customer. I chose portfolio 2 because we prioritize reliability, and this portfolio allows for capital investment in dispatchable energy, which at this time is natural gas. It would serve as an excellent short-term bridge toward energy generation transition by allowing CPS to invest in new gas units and the flexibility to convert existing and proposed natural gas units to cleaner, green, potentially hydrogen in the 2030s. This technology, among others, is expected to be developed within the decade of the 30s. This portfolio also, as was mentioned, shuts down Spruce 1, the coal plant, by 2028, and is projected to meet the 2030 cap goals. I would caution against overcommitting to purchasing and building new renewable energy at the expense of investing in dispatchable energy. I know that the IRA has incentives that are going to be very incentivizing, if you would, toward making those investments and purchasing potentially more renewable. I would hold off on that to be sure that our renewable investments aren't what is a tried and true in this next 7-year period going into the 2030s. I also believe that the PUC and ERCOT and those in the legislature will incorporate a capacity market requirement. That's my opinion from what I've heard, for the purpose of grid reliability, which is a priority to them like it is to us, of course, to the whole state. Dispatchability is critical to the grid reliability and affordability in this generation planning process. Investing in dispatchables also increases CPS's potential to have income from wholesale market sales. I do not believe that portfolio 9 would be more affordable, as the model reflects. Its heavy reliance on market purchases greatly increases the risk of higher fuel costs, and I believe the volatile market we're in right now is projected to continue, and so that's why I wouldn't side with the portfolio 9, even though the model is weighing it as being more, as a heavier and higher metric toward the affordability. I do believe that affordability and to the greater point of who's going to suffer the most in the crisis that is potentially ahead of us if we make the wrong decision are those most vulnerable in our community. And yes, I understand the climate advocate perspective. I understand that that is an issue, and there is health damage that is being incurred in our communities. I think the greater and more imminent threat is the one that we're facing here, which is the incoming economic challenge that will have us in a much more difficult situation. And what Dana spoke to about those other examples, those are examples of other entities that have gone forward with that type of investment. And so that's why I'm voting for Portfolio 2.
I think I said everything I wanted to say about, in the last couple of meetings, why I was leaning towards Portfolio 2, and those reasons have not changed. But I will try to, again, reiterate a few things. I'm going to speak for what I support, not what I do not support first. And when the time comes, if it's necessary, I'll speak against what I do not support. I think it's only fair because we might end up punching each other, and I don't want to do that. All along, and the members of the RAC, who I believe are the best placed individuals to speak to these options, because we've been in the trenches with CRA, with 1898, with CPS Energy, especially at these meetings. So I respect all the comments we've heard, here and outside. But there are a few things that we saw and we experienced during these meetings that I think place us in the best position to understand the nuances of how we've arrived at these portfolios as well as their performances. So I'm going to speak, as you all know, to the methodology, which was something I kept asking about. I specifically asked CRA a lot of questions about their methodology. I wasn't satisfied with the responses, frankly. And I have a longer thesis here that I want to present, but not right now. So I'll go to the subject of risk, because we talked about system reliability being the most important objective. And that objective, to me, incorporates, of course, what we also call system flexibility, but it brings up the question of risk. And when I look at risk, all types of risks are costly. Call it climate risk, call it even natural gas has risks. The climate has risks. Availability of resources has risks. So whatever you call risk, the fact that you don't pay for it is itself a distortion, because you have to pay for risk. That's why we take insurance. We insure our cars. We don't have accidents every year, but we pay the insurance, and that is the cost we pay for the risk that we're trying to avoid, even though they do not materialize. So when I look at the issue of reliability and the issue of dispatchability, which is really my big concern here, I have every faith in the fact that if we want to turn on the gas, we can turn it on. We can turn on the wind. We can turn on the sun. I think 2-3 weeks now, we've probably just had a fortunate break now that we have some sunshine. But last week and the week before that, it was all gloomy, dull. I wonder how much electricity was generated from solar farms. I don't know. But I did not see enough sunshine, and I cannot switch it on. But I know that I can turn on that gas spigot when I want to and generate electricity. So that's what I mean by the fact that I'm speaking about reliability, and I feel that it's important that we place even more emphasis on the fact that we want a reliable system. I've said this to many of our folks here. We live in a 24/7 system, must run all the time environment. So for me, that makes reliability even more important. I'm not ready to live with the fact that, I may not be able to generate electricity because the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing. Therefore, please go without electricity. That's not the world we live in. That's the world I live in the country I came from, but not in the world I live in now. So reliability is big for me. it probably deserves more than the 37% priority that is received in our DOT exercise. And so that's why I'm going, again, still sticking with 2, because it gives us that ability to deal with a variety of situations through the variability of the resources that are within that portfolio. I'll stop there for now, but I can chime in if I have some more to say. Thank you.
In continuing with Femi's remarks, I'll sum it up by saying we're voting for abundance. What do we have the most of? What can we rely on? And I think that P2 is still the best. I think gas is good. Nuclear is better. But there again, we need to have a reliable, flexible, sustainable energy source, or economic development will suffer here locally. I think gas will continue to improve. There was an article recently published about a 300 megawatt gas plant in Permian Basin that's net zero emissions on it. And so as that improves, we can take advantage of the newer technology that's just coming out based on fossil fuels.
Michael Sanchez?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Do you have additional comments?
Well, it's basically what I said at the last meeting, but personally, I do like that mindset of a mindset of abundance rather than a mindset of scarcity. That's why I'm sticking with number 2. I believe it's the right mix for reliability, affordability, and sustainability. It's the right stopgap for the next 7 years. It partially supports the climate action plan, and because so, it helps shield us from market forces, but not entirely. But most importantly, it does provide us that measure of dispatchable energy that is so important to all of us in a modern world. That's why I'm going with number 2.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Viagran, do you have a comment?
I just want to echo what Andy and Anita said for portfolio 9. I think that's the best option because it expands our energy uses, and we see more solar and more wind, but not to the extent where we're heavily relying on it. And that number where we're at 44% with P2 and 60% at reduction for P9, it just speaks so loudly because there is such my District 3 where I live, we still have a refinery there, and this does impact them. And I know that they want reliability and they want affordability, but they also want less visits to the emergency room because of bad air quality days. So my vote is for, or what I believe is the best option right now is portfolio 9.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, just a few comments to follow up. First of all, my number 1 objective in this whole process has been to shut the coal plants down. We were fortunate we were able to shut the Dealey plants down, avoid a big investment that probably didn't make a lot of sense in 2009. And I'm very concerned that we get it done, and we get it done on a timely basis. And being an old operating guy, I got to think about what is possible in the plants and what moves can we make. And what world do we live in? Well, if you look at 9 and you look at 2 and I don't know, you look at 6, 7, they all, the only one that gets us out a little faster is 3, but we're out of all the coal business in 6 years, 2028. That, in my world, from what I've seen in the past, that's light speed, and we need to do it faster if we can. but we need to sure do it by then, okay? It has to happen. What environment are we doing this in? We're closing down a baseload coal plant in a world where ERCOT is politically controlled by people that don't particularly like us, okay, or what we're trying to do, all right? And we have to have their permission to do this. Now, how do we get their permission? We get their permission by two things. One, saying that we're increasing our reliability, and in increasing our reliability, we're increasing the reliability of the grid. They seem to not be able to get out of their way. E3 cost them, that's an engineering firm, cost them $800,000, year and a half of study, and wouldn't even come to the Senate to answer questions. Fortunately, we didn't do that. Is there a little difference here? Are we seeing a little difference? And the reality is that I don't think they'll get anything done. And that is really scary. It's not just our reliability, it's the reliability of the whole grid. We have a big percent of that grid. Most of the people up there simply cannot say the word capacity market. They've got to say energy only, free market. There's some things that the free market just doesn't work very well in. I'm sorry, I spent 35, 40 years in it, and it's brutal. And in some cases, it doesn't work, and with infrastructure, it really is a challenge because the barrier to entry is so large, and there's people skimming around the edges to make money on it, and then when you try to find them, they're not there. They scurry away like cockroaches when you turn the lights on. So the problem is, how do we get the coal plants shut down? To me, number 2 gives us the best chance of shutting the coal plants down. Remember, this is a transition plan. We've already had step 1. That's the flex power bundle. This is step 2. The culture in CPS has changed, okay? It's open. It's transparent. It's not insular. They'll share anything with you except what they declare as, competitive, sensitive information. We're still working on that so I'm still working on that one, okay? But the point is that we've got a situation here where we've also, as Dee Dee has asked, and she's been right on for as long as I've been listening to her the last 2 or 3 years, we've installed a culture of a plan, an integrated resource plan. When you start it, you don't stop it, and you make incremental changes. So I'm hopeful that John and his folks, Abba, will keep running this plan. And if they get something approved by the board, they look at it, they make sure what they got approved, but if they see something, they'll come back to the board and say, wait a minute, we see something different. This is just an 8-year plan, really. Now, does it just do gas? No. No, it really doesn't, because as was stated, we're going to add 1,180 megawatts of solar, and then another 50 of wind. That compares with 9, which kind of concerns me, where we're looking at adding 2,300 megawatts of wind. We only have 1,000, okay? So we're going to triple our wind capacity in 6 years. I just, as an operating guy, I look at that, and that gives me chills, okay? I'm saying I don't think I could do that in 6 years or 8 years, because it's taken a long time to get 1,000 in place. And then you pile on top of that the fact that we've got a whole big fight on eminent domain, land rights. I got my gun, don't come across my land. Or how are we going to get those lines laid? And I know the plans are to keep laying them, but all you have to have is just 2 or 3 people that say, no, 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 no. And those people are sitting around in the legislature getting ready to go into full session as we speak. Also, another thing that kind of concerns me is that if we look at the mix and how we can bring it on, another reason I like too is we can bring it on slowly. Because absolutely right, as people have said, we do something fast, we're going to make mistakes. It always happens. We're going to get investments, they're going to be dead investments. And we can't have that. So I like the idea of bringing on reciprocating engines that can go into our existing facilities and and slowly replace, evolve in our replacement. We don't need an evolution, we need a revolution. And we need to revolve through this and try to get those steam plants down because they're old, they're not reliable. They're basically, I would think, by this time, they're 50 years old. And that's a tough thing to keep running a 50-year-old machine, and particularly when you run it on an intermittent basis. So I go back to the same thing that Al and Femi and several people have said. We have to focus first on reliability. We made a big argument with the consultants that flexibility and reliability is one of the same. It was 37 and 10, 47% of the weight put on by the folks in this room and online. Almost 50% was on reliability. And then it was pretty equal between affordability and sustainability. Sustainability is a little higher, a few points, 2 or 3 points. That's fine. But the reality is that is CPS's, that's their value proposition. We're reliable, we're affordable, and we're sustainable. If we lose that, we lose the company, we lose the benefit to the city, and we lose our competitive advantage in the state and the nation. So we've got to keep thinking about how we make sure we can prove to people that don't like us, that don't want us to do something, that we're reliable. And the only one that I could make a strong argument for is 2. Now, can I make it for 9? Well, they're going to look at me and go, who's going to put in those transmission lines? Oh, we are. Yeah, well, they're already fighting about that. And then, there's no problem. It's about the same amount of solar. And why do I like solar? Because you can put it where you need it to. You can avoid the distribution cost. Refineries are all about logistics. Power is about logistics. You've got to make it and move it, okay? You can't even put it in a tank like I could gasoline. So it is almost an instantaneous thing. If your logistics don't work, you don't have it. And I'm concerned about the logistics of 9. And 6 is it's 400,000 megawatts of wind. And we've already sat and talked about how we want to convert to solar and not wind. And I asked the consultants, why did your model pick so dang much wind? They said, well, it's good economies of scale. Well, it is if you can transport it. Oh, yeah, we can transport it. Yeah, really? I live here. I don't believe that. So I hate to go on so long, but I really feel that it's important that we get the first things first, and that is to get the coal plants shut down by 2026 or earlier and never have a coal train come in here again. Ever. Okay? All right, thank you. We'll have another round of vote. So this time we're going to do as Councilwoman Sandoval suggests, and I think it was what I tried to do the first time, but I wasn't smart enough to explain it to people. We're going to ask people to give their second and third choice. We already know their first choice. And if we still have John Agather on the phone, John, will you give me your second? Yeah, sure.
After all this discussion, there may be some of these people that are willing to change their choice.
Willing to go through that, but I don't want to leave anybody out if they have something to do. Oh, wait a minute. I'm getting. Oh, yeah, sure. I was just trying to get it done. Okay, thanks. All right. There's still cookies back there, by the way, and they're good. They're very good.
Are we on break?
Yes, it appears that they're on break.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Hello?
Okay, let's try to get out of here before dark. Thanks, Doc. Would you go get them in here? No, but I know Terry can do it. Thanks, Doc. Okay, I have had a lot of advice in the last 15 minutes, okay? So I have been given all kinds of direction, and finally, I think we came up with the simplest way to do it, all right? Because I tried to explain ranked choice voting at the break to a couple of people, and they looked at me like I'm crazy. Well, I probably am, but so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go through the voting again and ask if anybody changes their vote, okay? If they don't, we'll go to Plan B, okay? But everybody said give people a chance after the discussion to potentially change their vote. Okay, if someone has given up on us, their vote will stay the way it is, whatever it is, okay? If they're still here and hanging in with us, they've had a chance to move it. If they don't move it, say, I don't change, no move, okay? All right, first one, John Agather. All right, I don't know. Guess he's gone. He stays too. Kurt Anastasio.
Staying with 2.
Dee Dee Balmeris. Jim Berg.
I'm with 2.
Andy Castillo.
Staying with 9.
Dr. Cantu. Tony. Christopher. Anaqua. Jack.
Reed, can you repeat that? Because we can't hear.
You can't hear?
I can't hear with those last 3 votes.
And well, let me just summarize it. Nobody's changed a thing, okay? And where am I? Michael Koenig. Anita Ledbetter.
No change.
No change. Dana McGinnis.
No change.
Anne Marie.
I'm changing to 2.
Okay. Peter.
Staying on 2.
Femi. Al. Michael.
I'll stay with 2.
Reads 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Via Grant. I'm sorry. Councilman.
Oh, staying with 9.
Okay. Yeah, after your statement, I believed you. Okay, so we've got 13, 4, and 3. We have the required number of votes. If anyone would like to say anything, please speak now, or we're going to leave. Thirteen.
Can I wait?
Yes, Dee Dee.
As I get Cookie out of my face.
No, that's fine. We got time to wait.
I want to start by saying that Anaqua and I and Dr. Cantu, we've been working years. I've been in this space since 2018, trying to shut the coal plant. So I do want to recognize that we're shutting down. We're shutting down Spruce. And we have been, community members have been calling for a public process to do that. And this is what we've gone through. I think that, since Rudy took the helm, really pushing this process. So I appreciate being here. I will say that I will ask or make a recommendation that, CPS Energy update this resource plan every 2 to 3 years. And you alluded to some things too, Reed. So just want to add those comments, and I do appreciate and respect all the comments that were made for whatever portfolio we voted for today. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Dee Dee. Any other comments? Anyone?
Yes, I agree.
Yes,
on
I'm
the-
sorry.
Excuse
Somebody got to speak up. I'm looking in all directions. Go ahead, Anne Marie.
I agree with Dee Dee on having this be a review every couple of years. We need to hold this space. It needs to be respected, and it needs to be utilized. The real legacy comes with setting up something like this and having it continue to be used.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Christopher.
I want to second and third these other comments and point out that we have been playing a really important function here in response to a perception of a lack of transparency in the past. And as we've heard, that's changing. And I hope we can continue to maintain that. And I would encourage us sending a message to CPS and to the Board of Trustees that they keep that in mind in terms of how they want to continue public engagement, whether that's in the RAC as it's currently constituted, some new formulation of that, some reformulation of the CAC, and in particular, not just as a theoretical exercise, but what they plan on doing over the next 4 or 5 months as we see what's coming down the pike from Austin. Because there's a good chance there will be at least some changes, and making sure that the public has a way of hearing about it and then weighing in on their thoughts, I think will be important in maintaining this new trust and this new transparency.
Thank you, Christopher. Anyone else?
Reed.
Okay.
Reed.
Anaqua.
Reed.
Yes, thank you. A further recommendation, I think, would be for us to finally figure out the environmental health cost of our power generation. I think the community has been asking for it, and I think a lot of RAC members have brought it up too. And so I think that would be in our best interest to figure out. And then lastly, this is probably a recommendation for Charles River Associates. But in the literature that we did get, I have to point out the inherent institutional racism in some of the color coding, mainly the darker colors, brown.
I didn't like that either. I couldn't see it, and I didn't like it either.
Yeah,
Okay,
being
so red, white, and blue works for me.
Yeah, so for those that may not know, the legend has least favorable colors being darker and the white colors, lighter colors being more favorable. And so I think that plays an inherent bias in decision making as well. And so I think that has to change. And I don't know who put that in there, but might want to check with some of those folks. So that
I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. Okay, we got Peter. We got Jim. Jim was on first, and then I'll get Peter and then Michael. Jim, go ahead.
Reed, this is a question for you to, as far as where does the RAC go from here? 2023, and what about your leadership? Are you going to stick around?
Do I have to answer that now?
No.
Okay. Let me tell you how I feel about this. This is a great group. Okay. This doesn't happen every day or very often. I totally respect every one of you, and it's been pretty successful. I do have concerns about the RAC in general, because I think I like an organization that comes up, comes together, gets the job done, and goes on. That's what we did with the winter storm, and we turn it over to people that have authority and power. We have no authority, we have no power, we just have our opinions, and we can express them. So I've already mentioned to several people that I believe that after we do the rate structure, or the rate design, that I think the board needs to reevaluate who they have and what they have doing this. I will stay on till the end of my 2-year term, but I won't after that. I mean, I might even be dead by then. But anyway, the point is that I think organizations have a purpose. They serve their purpose, but they can be looked at as shadow organizations. And I'm very concerned about anyone viewing the RAC as a shadow board or a shadow council. I don't think that's what it's intended to be, and I don't think it's what it should be. Now, I do believe, just as Dee Dee has mentioned, this has to be a process that's ingrained culturally in CPS. I can't imagine running a refinery and not having a continuous improvement program, okay? I just don't know how you do it, okay? And the problem, if you don't have one of those, is that from time to time, you get in a bind and have to take a lot of risk and make a big jump. Little steps are always a lot better than big ones. And they're a lot lower risk. And you can back off and admit defeat easier if it's not such a big problem. When you make big decisions, you got a chance of making a big mistake. So I do believe the culture has changed. That's thanks to each one of you on the phone or here in the room for what you've done and the dignity and the maturity that y'all have each brought to this process. Because there was always a fear that this wouldn't work, that this would just be one kind of cage fight, okay? Well, it wasn't, okay? And it won't be. And for that, I thank each one of you. And I'm in your debt for that. Now, that's where I am, Jim. I hope that answers your question. Next is Peter.
So I wanted to say thank you to all the RAC members and just really appreciate everyone's contributions, as was noted earlier. Great group. Those side conversations, learned so much. Just a really insightful and very experienced group of people that come together. And Reed, I want to thank you and Dr. Cantu for your leadership in bringing us through to this place so far. And I know you're saying to the end of your term and beyond. And to your comments about the actual RAC, I think it really serves well because we are a publicly owned utility. If we weren't, then we wouldn't have this opportunity. It's a great opportunity because it's such a, to whom much is given, much is required, and we've been given a great entity, and we have to maintain it. And I think having this community engagement, this model here, and I think refining it and finding better ways to do it to achieve the goals, and having the representation from every part, every sector of the city and of industry, I think is important going forward, considering that the board is a small board. And I know we got the CAC as well, and it's a different type of formation. I think I agree with you having to review it, but that's my opinion, is that I think going forward, this is a living, breathing entity that we need to keep alive. And I think with the community engagement that we've begun with the inaugural group is going to be critical to that ultimate success.
Thank you, Peter. As we all know, ultimately that'll be the board's decision, and glad it's not mine. Oh, there was another one over here. Was it Michael or Al? Okay, Al, I'm sorry. Al, you're going to have to move around. You're behind two big guys. You know?
I'm just a little guy.
Well, you're hiding behind them. Come on out.
I do want to thank everyone for this and for educating me on many different levels. The big takeaway I have is I want to congratulate Dee Dee and her group for, they wanted to close the coal plant. But the one thing that does concern me is that it seems like gas is the next thing to go. And I'd like to defend that only because it's so, it's a natural resource that we can use. And I think every other choice of generation will cause the rate to go up. And my concern is going to be for the low and moderate income people. I think we need to keep gas in the mix.
Thank you, Al. Did I see another hand over here? Oh, okay. Femi.
I think I'll say, yes, gas is the next to go, but at a reasonable price and at a reasonable cost. I was fortunate to attend COP26 back in 2021, and The one thing I think I've said it in one of our previous meetings was that the big culprit was coal. Again, it's a global phenomenon. We're talking about getting rid of what affects the globe and looking at places like China and knowing what they do with coal. So the agreements amongst all the nations of the world on this global phenomenon was that coal has to go. Natural gas got a pass, but not because it's not dirty, but it was coal was the dirtiest thing to get rid of at that time. Now, I'm going to pivot to economics because when the City Council adopted the cap back in 2019, I remembered giving this statement in the council chambers that the plan was not complete. It was not done. It was actually, it had big flaws. The biggest flaw was the economics because it was not in there. Fast forward very quickly to the analysis that CRA has done, which is largely deep in economics, the sort of analysis that we did not have when we did the cap in 2019. So I'm glad that, first of all, the Office of Sustainability hired a consultant to do what was called a triple bottom line analysis, which is economics. We're seeing another version of it now in what CRA has done by showing us real numbers that point to economics and why certain portfolios are costly because of the risk that they bear. So risk comes with a cost, I always say that. And all risks are costly. So from a plan that was not complete back in 2019 to one that at least is taking segments of that plan and putting them through the economic grinder, as it were, is the way forward. And I think we should go forward with that and say how much more evidence do we need to bring to bear on future generation plans? Healthcare costs, healthcare risks, fuel costs, fuel risks, all these things are part of the picture, but we should at least use as much information as we have available at the time we make the decisions and make the best decision given the information we have, not given fantasies or things that are still on the drawing board or things that are frankly not supported by evidence. And I say this because it's easy to get sentimental. And I'm glad that we're taking a portfolio right now that doesn't lock us in. It gives us that flexibility to adapt when the technologies become available. And I think to all we've said so far, this should not be the end. It should be a continuous process, and I support that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Femi. Okay, one more time around. We've been checking. No. Do you have anything, Dr. Kinsey? Yeah, no, it's too small for me to read, but she can read it. Okay, look, I want to thank you all very much. One more time, I want to thank CPS staff, Chad, John, Benny, everybody. They've just done a great job, Pava. Hard work, a lot of hard work. It's been 6 months, maybe more, because we got started on this, and then we stopped, and we got started, and we stopped, because we had to do other things. But it's good to have the public speak, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you all. We are adjourned.